Tonight, growing questions about Joe Biden's health. The former president in a battle with cancer, as a new book claims top aides hid signs of cognitive decline while he was still in office. Plus, President Trump on Capitol Hill, pushing Republicans to rally behind his massive tax and spending plan.
It's the biggest bill ever passed, and we got to get it done.
But is the GOP ready to fall in line? And 30 million Americans on alert. Deadly storms strike again as tornadoes rip through the heartland. Now the big question, where is the danger headed next? Plus, Wall Street on edge as America loses its AAA credit rating. We break down what it means for your wallet. And drones buzzing over American cities, while lawmakers are sounding the alarm on the national security threat. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. New questions tonight about Joe Biden's health and his prostate cancer diagnosis. Good evening in Washington, I'm Jenna Browder. The former president is battling late-stage prostate cancer, a diagnosis revealed just days ago. Sympathies have been pouring in for the Biden family and former President Biden, and at the same time, a lot of questions, including why his doctors, some of the best in the world treating the then commander-in-chief, didn't catch this sooner. Some are also asking if the Bidens knew and chose to keep it from the American people. President Trump called the diagnosis very sad and questioned the timing of the announcement.
I'm surprised that it wasn't, the public wasn't notified a long time ago, because to get to stage 9, that's a long time.
Former President Biden's Gleason score is a 9. This is a scale that measures how aggressive prostate cancer is. Biden's last physical in 2024 found no concerns, but it's unclear if he received a PSA test, which can help detect prostate cancer. For men over 70, that test isn't always recommended due to risks of false positives and unnecessary treatment.
Screening does not do a good job at identifying the most aggressive cancers that have the ability to spread or metastasize and otherwise cause potentially life-threatening harm to patients. And as men age, the probability of benefiting from early identification and treatment of prostate cancer diminishes. So the available evidence argues against aggressive prostate cancer screening when men are older.
And Dr. Matthew Smith, who you just saw there, says many patients feel fine even as the cancer advances, making the diagnosis a shock. At the same time, Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel, brother of Rahm Emanuel, was on MSNBC and said he believes Biden likely had this cancer at the start of his presidency. And now a new book is adding to the debate, Original Sin by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson. It claims Biden's team tried to hide signs of cognitive decline while he was in office. His granddaughter, Naomi Biden, quickly fired back, calling the book uninspired lies. All right, for more on this, let's bring in CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody. David, good to see you. So as Commander-in-Chief and as someone who's more advanced in years, wouldn't the White House doctors be testing for just about everything? I guess your thoughts on the diagnosis and all of the questions now surrounding it.
Yeah, you would think, Jenna. I mean, look, this just in, he was president of the United States. Aren't you running a full battery of tests? It's so many unanswered questions, and that's a big one for sure. He's not just kind of like a normal guy going to have a regular doctor visit, which, by the way, even if he was a normal guy at that age going to a doctor visit, of course you're going to screen for that. I mean, I can tell you firsthand that is screened pretty much every time you go in, especially as you move on into later stages of life. So clearly that's going to be a question, and it kind of goes to basically what this new book, Original Sin, is all about, which is the cover-up. This plays into the cover-up narrative, and it's a real problem.
Yeah, it's a question of if this is another cover-up for that, what people are calling that cover-up. So the cancer announcement comes also just days after the audio of Biden speaking with special counsel Robert Hur, and that audio being made public, and also right before the book Original Sin released today. What about the timing of this cancer announcement, David? And do you think it drowns out some of these other negative stories about Biden's cognitive health?
No, I actually think it does the exact opposite. It amplifies it. It now makes it even worse because we're already talking about the cover-up. And let's be honest, even before Original Sin came out, we were talking about a potential cover-up by the Biden administration and the media, both. It's a confluence, Jenna, of both, right? We've lost faith in both the media and our federal government, and now we have a confluence of both, losing faith in both, and of course, both are under scrutiny right now. And this just makes it even worse. So this idea that this news was going to drop to kind of change the subject, as most often they do in Washington, doesn't make any sense here. This actually adds fuel to the fire.
So ever since that June debate, the dominant narrative around Joe Biden seems to be questions about his age, about his fitness for office. David, will this be the defining narrative of his legacy?
Well, sadly, it might not be, and let me explain. Look, there have been questions about mental acuity and fitness, but the deeper issue here, Jenna, is integrity and honesty. And I know it's tough to talk about right now, especially after that aggressive prostate diagnosis, because we will all want to be praying for Joe Biden. There's no doubt about it, but there is a pattern here. There's a pattern of dishonesty. I mean, remember, he stopped running for president. He had to drop out in 1987 because of a plagiarism scandal, plagiarizing a law review article in his first year of law school. He said he was in the top half of the class in his law school. He was not. It's been seen many, many times that he's covered up some of his family connections as it relates to the business dealings that he's had just recently. And now this new book, Original Sin, is talking about how Joe Biden hid Beau Biden, his son, his cancer at the time, that was hidden as well. So you go down the list, and that's just the beginning of a very long list of dishonesty here.
Yeah.
And that's just going to lead to more questions about what did you know, when did you know it, and why were you covering it up? And it's an integrity issue, Jenna.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, a lot of empathy, sympathy for the Biden family,
Yes.
and also a lot of questions. CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody, thank you very much.
You bet.
In other news, President Trump took a brief trip to Capitol Hill today to meet with House Republicans. The president met with lawmakers for an hour to discuss the importance of getting his big, beautiful bill passed. Trump is trying to unite the House GOP members who are still divided on the multi-trillion-dollar bill. CBN senior White House correspondent Kelly Wright joins us now with more details of the president's meeting. Kelly, what did the president say about his encounter with Republicans?
Hey, Jenna. Well, this was a brief but important trip for the president. He spent the morning in conference with his fellow Republicans on Capitol Hill, just as you've said, to put his personal touch on members who are still working hard on getting that big, beautiful bill passed. And as the president began to leave, walking out with House Speaker Mike Johnson and other members of Congress, he made several stops to talk to reporters about his efforts to convince congressional members to get the bill passed. The president telling reporters that his meeting with congressional members was one of love and unity, and he added that the proposed legislation, if passed, will be a great bill for America and the people of America.
Here's what I want on Medicaid. We're not touching anything. All I want is one thing, 3 words. We don't want any waste, fraud, or abuse. Very simple. Waste, fraud, abuse. Other than that, we're leaving it. Medicare, we're leaving it. All we're after, and this is for the good of it, is a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse. That's all we're doing. We're not touching it. The Democrats are going to destroy it.
Keep that in mind. The president saying he will not touch Medicaid, but Republicans disagree. They say that the Republican bill and the president's big, beautiful bill will actually hurt more Americans.
The Republicans are trying to jam this big, ugly bill down the throats of the American people, which will take away health care, impose the largest cut to nutritional assistance in American history.
And while Democrats are not supporting any aspect of this big, beautiful bill, Republicans, like Representative Tim Burchett of Tennessee, well, they tell CBN News that they are quite pleased that the president showed up to give them a pep talk and help them iron out their differences.
And he talked about where we were in history and what we needed to do. You know, Medicaid was an issue that I was concerned about. And he was concerned that about the messaging that was out, that we were going to hurt poor folks. and you know, the single moms with 2 kids, and nothing is further from the truth.
So, Jenna, here's the deal. The president knows that this is an important bill for him. It will actually help establish his presidency to the point that he wants it to be established. And this big, beautiful bill is a way that he believes will pave a way to help all Americans. And he's looking forward to signing it into law. He's confident that it will be passed. Jenna?
Okay, we will see Kelly Wright at the White House. Thank you, Kelly. Well, severe weather is slamming the central U.S., and it's not over yet. More than 30 million people are under alert as new tornadoes hit Oklahoma, Nebraska, and Colorado. Winds nearly 140 miles per hour left homes flattened in Kentucky. CBN's Operation Blessing is on the ground providing food, aid, and spiritual support.
So today, Operation Blessing got on a side-by-side with meals in hand, ready to take one less burden away from the people that have been impacted here. Today we've been hitting the road to these areas that have been heavily hit and making sure that they have a warm meal as well as water to give them the energy they need to be able to start to clean up.
Meanwhile, meteorologists say the storm system is shifting east with the Ohio and Tennessee valleys next in line. Flooding, hail, and more tornadoes could strike through Wednesday, even reaching the mid-Atlantic and the southeast. And before we go to break, an update on the Middle East. Israel is facing intensifying pressure from some of its closest allies over its escalating military offensive in Gaza. On Tuesday, the UK announced it's suspending free trade talks with Israel and summoned the Israeli ambassador to London. In a rare direct message, Foreign Secretary David Lammy sent this message to the Israeli people.
We are unwavering in our commitment to your security and to your future, to countering the very real threat from Iran, the scourge of terrorism, and the evils of anti-Semitism. But the conduct of the war in Gaza is damaging our relationship with your government.
The UK also issued new sanctions targeting settlers in the West Bank, Biblical Judea, and Samaria. Israel's foreign ministry called those actions unjustified. The moves come after growing international demands, including from the United States, that Israel lift its blockade and allow more food and aid into Gaza. In response, Israel allowed more trucks to cross into the Strip earlier this week. Meanwhile, the White House says President Trump wants to see the fighting end and is urging Israel to focus on securing the release of the hostages still held in Gaza. Coming up, from trade to tariffs to the national debt, what's happening on the world stage and how it could affect your personal finances. Welcome back. The pressure is mounting on the U.S. economy, and the dollar is feeling it. The currency slipped again today following a credit downgrade from Moody's and fresh warnings from the Federal Reserve. The downgrade highlighted America's $36 trillion debt and growing concern about the government's ability to manage it. And while the economy remains stable for now, economists warn the Trump tariffs could push the U.S. into a recession. If that happens, Washington may have less room to respond. With debt already so high, large stimulus packages may be off the table. Mark Hamrick joins us now. He is the Washington Bureau Chief and Senior Economic Analyst at Bankrate. Mark, welcome. So how significant is it that Moody's has downgraded the U.S. credit rating?
Good to see you, Jenna. It doesn't come as a surprise. The 3 ratings agencies in total have been issuing these warnings in over many years, but it's not a good report card for the fiscal stewardship of the United States budget. In other words, it is essentially a bad grade. And so what it tells us is that we're getting into a worse position, not a better position. And it can, requires some courage on the part of elected officials to not just pass along unfunded tax cuts, to essentially pay our bills in real time and to pay down the debt and deficits that we've already accumulated. It does have the ultimate impact of underscoring that the current situation is not sustainable, and yet here we are on the verge of passing another unfunded tax cut.
So with the U.S. dollar falling, Mark, should Americans anticipate, potentially paying more for imports for traveling abroad?
Well, that's the impact of a currency which is worth less money. And so the question really is, at what level does it essentially bottom out in the near term? If it's merely the kind of modest correction that we've seen lately, I don't think that that is of concern. But, you know, you've heard this idea about sell the U.S., and we've seen that reflected in the rising bond market yield and the devaluing of the U.S. dollar in the marketplace. We have seen a recovery in stock prices. We're grateful for that. But one of the great things about the United States economy and its financial markets is that it has been seen as the most credible, the most vibrant, the strongest in the world, and now international investors are raising whether that is going to be the case going forward.
Yeah. So President Trump's tariffs, they haven't caused a jump in inflation yet. But Mark, if retailers like Walmart and others start passing on some of the price hikes, how soon could families start to feel it?
Well, I think first of all, we should anticipate probably some of this data showing up in the next month or two. We know, for example, that surveys of companies, and these are multiple surveys, indicate that a majority of them plan to pass along the price increases to consumers to some degree. Walmart said that in the last week. Home Depot indicates that it will try to absorb some of the price increases, so it's saying the impacts will be limited, and Amazon is saying it will be more significant. So, you know, we think about the fact, Jenna, you identified, I remember it very vividly several years ago, about inflation being a key issue on the minds of voters. You saw that coming earlier than most, and it was the #1 economic issue in last year's presidential campaign. And here we go again with the risk of not only an economic slowdown, but consumers sort of being asked to go to their wallets once again.
Yeah, Mark, do you have fears recession? These tariffs could eventually cause not just the inflation, but recession too.
Well, it's certainly a possibility. I don't think we see the signs of that right now. We're always at risk of a recession. The question is, what is the cause? How long might it be? How severe? The unfortunate thing about this is it will have been essentially self-inflicted. And so to the degree that the administration backs down from the worst case scenarios of the tariffs, that reduces the chances of a recession in the near term, reduces the likelihood that we're going to hit with higher inflation than perhaps might otherwise be the case.
Okay, Mark Hamrick, we are out of time. Mark Hamrick with Bankrate. Thank you, Mark. Nice to see you. And up next, the dangers of drones. A Capitol Hill hearing tackles the potential problems. Welcome back. The Senate Judiciary Committee is working to address the public safety threat posed by unauthorized drones, from carelessly flying into protected airspaces to contraband drops over prisons. Drones are increasingly putting Americans at risk, and state and local authorities say there's very little currently that they can do to prevent it. National security correspondent Caitlin Burke was following today's hearing on Capitol Hill and joins us now. Caitlin, why is law enforcement currently so limited?
Jenna, the threats posed by drones have expanded and evolved just as quickly as the technology. Currently, only 4 federal agencies have the authority to take measures necessary to detect drones and then mitigate their risks. Those include the Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Defense, and the Department of Energy. According to today's expert witnesses, the threat posed by these unmanned aerial systems has grown so substantially, these agencies are no longer enough to protect Americans and our critical infrastructure.
From contraband drops over prison yards to surveillance of critical infrastructure and interruptions of emergency scenes, public safety agencies now face a complex airspace risk.
There is currently bipartisan legislation being considered in the Senate that would expand authority to state and local law enforcement, allowing them to detect, track, identify, and mitigate the threat posed by rogue drones. It would also provide training to officials tasked with these new roles. In her testimony, Georgetown law professor Laura Donahue warned any new legislation must be carefully considered.
It's important that we have the authorities necessary to meet these threats, but what Congress passes cannot be a blank check. It needs to be carefully drafted to take account of constitutional rights.
Law enforcement professionals working at both the U.S. southern border and in the U.S. prison system say they welcome federal oversight. But without a solution soon, lives will be lost. Ricky Dixon, the president of the American Correctional Association, says items dropped by drones are turning America's prisons into command centers for drug cartels and gang leaders.
It's only a matter of time before a firearm or firearms are dropped in by drones with timing synchronized with cell phones so that a specific inmate or group of inmates are in a position to receive them in an effort to take over a facility.
Witnesses say one of the first tangible steps Congress can take would be to determine which federal agency would spearhead authority expansion efforts. Until then, they say state and local law enforcement will continue operating blindly, representing a critical gap in national security. Jenna?
All right, national security correspondent Caitlin Burke. Thank you, Caitlin. And still ahead, a drone story with a very different ending. How one man used his to save a life.
Download the CBN News app, 24/7 news from a Christian perspective at home or on the road. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Set daily prayer goals and pray for news stories. Read the most important news and watch CBN News Channel live. CBN News, because truth matters. Go to cbnnewsapp.com to get the app today.
Finally tonight, an incredible rescue in the Florida Panhandle, all thanks to a man's drone and quick thinking. A shark fisherman named Andrew Smith was fishing on Pensacola Beach when he spotted a teen stuck in a rip current and struggling to stay afloat. Smith himself can't swim, so he grabbed the drone he uses to cast bait and tied a flotation device to it. After 2 attempts at flying the drone out to the girl, he was able to drop the flotation device to her, keeping her head above water until first responders could arrive.
If it wasn't for that second drop, she wouldn't have made it. The EMS said she wouldn't have made it, the cops and the lifeguards.
And the girl's father called Smith a guardian angel, and his use of a drone has actually inspired public officials to look into using drones as tools for lifeguards. Well done. All right, that's going to do it for Faith Nation this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Have a great night.